to the sidelines. Has a man wide open. It's tipped. It's picked off. MJ Devonshire. Got face. He's going to take it to the end zone. Pittsburgh takes the lead.
He loves those moments. It reminds me of last year in the Garden against St. John. And guys just stepped up. Blake hits a what the hell three. You know, we're like, what are you doing? And he's done that all year.
Klicka out to Bizzario. It's over. The Pitt Panthers have upset Wisconsin. Anybody if he hits his field goal. Up and got it. Sauls does it again.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to a emergency episode of Simplify. I'm here with friend of the show, Dom Campbell of Inside the Panthers, and the volleyball schedule just dropped for 2024. I did promise we'd have an episode when it dropped, and we're making good on that promise. Dom, how are we doing tonight?
Doing great, Zach. Obviously, when we got volleyball news, you know who's the most excited? It's me.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, hey, we're all excited. The people love volleyball. So, I mean, just you want to go get right into it?
Yeah, sure.
So, obviously, the main news right now is the schedule. We've known bits and pieces of the schedule as it's come out. There have been, other teams announcing games versus Pitt. We've had other ACC teams that have dropped their schedule prior to Pitt. So, we've known the general structure of Pitt's schedule for a while, but it's official today. And we'll start with the out-of-conference. So their first non-exhibition match is at Oregon, August 30th, to kick off the season against, I believe, an Elite Eight team from last year. Yep, an Elite Eight team. Other highlights include a neutral site match in September on the 14th against UCSB, the return of the regular season Keystone State rivalry at home against Penn State on the 18th of September, a home game against Marquette, and then after that, getting right into ACC play. Did I miss anybody else in the non-con? That's
Michigan. They play Michigan first on the 24th before they go to Oregon.
I believe that's an exhibition game, though.
No, I think it's a real game. It doesn't say exhibition on it, so I think that's a real. They generally don't play exhibition matches for the. Well, they might, but they wouldn't do it after the blue gold scrimmage. I think they generally play.
Well, I'm looking at the graphic here, and I don't know if the team messed up, but it does say that the game on the 24th at Michigan is an exhibition.
Okay, then maybe it is, and I just didn't check it. But on the schedule, it doesn't say anything online, so let me check and see as well. Yeah, it is an exhibition. Okay, I guess it is an exhibition. All right, well, it doesn't say that. We have just clarified for all fans out there that is an exhibition game. I didn't know that when I wrote my piece, but guess what? It doesn't matter because it'll be fun to see Pitt play Michigan, I guess. I won't be at Ann Arbor unless someone wants to drive me there, so I'll be at home, just hopefully following along.
That's right. If anyone's listening to this podcast, give Dom a ride. All right. So let's start out with that first game, opening up the season against Oregon. We did play them last year, I believe, in Pittsburgh.
Yep.
But like I said last year, they were in the Elite Eight. I believe they were ranked number 7 in the country and also ranked 8th in the RPI, the Volleyball Power Index metric, 29-6 team. Now, you were talking about this a little bit off the air, but scheduling a team like Oregon for your out-of-conference schedule, why is that so important to start the season off like this?
Well, for Pitt, I mean, they want to have the best RPI available. So obviously, you want to play the best teams. You don't want to play every single one of the best teams. You need to win games, but you still want to play some of the best teams in Oregon, who Pitt hosted last year. Obviously, this is like a home and away where they'll play Oregon on the road to open the season. Last year was a great game. Pitt went down 2 sets, almost came back and won it very close in that 5th set, but Oregon just squeaked it out. Obviously, Oregon is a great team. They made the Elite Eight 2022 as well, so 2 straight Elite Eight appearances. They are a very, very solid program. It's a great start for Pitt. Now, obviously, looking at season openers, Pitt's lost the last 2 season openers. They lost to BYU last year in Montana, and they lost to San Diego, who eventually made the Final Four in 2022. that season as well. So they'll be looking to end that streak of losses in the first game. So last year, Pitt had a pretty solid showing in the non-conference, and obviously they lost to BYU and Oregon, which isn't great, but BYU and Oregon are very solid volleyball programs, so losing to them is not going to hurt you in the long run. Obviously, Pitt did well enough in the ACC and didn't lose many games, so they were able to lock up that fourth spot. Obviously, the Louisville matchup, which we'll talk about later when we talk about Louisville, was important. So looking at the non-conference, you're trying to play not only just the best teams in the Power Four, because obviously Pac-12 doesn't exist anymore, which we'll get into. Trying to play the best non-conference teams as well. So good teams out in California. I mean, obviously, we see Pepperdine and UC Santa Barbara on there. Those are both solid teams. You also see teams like UMBC, who made the NCAA tournament last year. They played them at home. They'll play them again at home. You got East Carolina, who are in the NIVC, which is basically the equivalent of the NIT. Just a really good, solid non-conference for the most part. And obviously, we'll talk about some of the bigger games, but Oregon to start out with, I love it. I mean, that's a really tough game. But if you get a win there, that's huge going into Selection Sunday. If you're as long as Pitt doesn't completely collapse throughout the season and plays the way we think they will, which could be the best Pitt team of all time. So I'm very excited for that season opener in Eugene, Oregon. Big game. That could be a pivotal match for Pitt going forward. Obviously in the rest of the regular season.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, Oregon was ranked 7 last year, and I mean, say that it ends up the same way. You know, Pitt was ranked, I believe, 4th overall when it came to seeding. So, say it's a similar, gap between the two teams in this year. If you have that head to head, that is going to be one of the separating factors. Now, Pitt was a little bit better and ended up winning it in ACC play. But like you said, having this in your back pocket is going to be one of those games that you want to have. And then, I mean, we'll talk about some of the other ones. Another road game at USC, who Pitt fans will remember. We played them in the round of 32 last year, another tournament team, another Big Ten team, RIP Pac-12. Do they still have that really good player who I'm blanking on the name of?
Skylar Fields. No, she graduated, so they don't have her. But still a good program. Still a program you got to be careful with. Obviously, going to LA for a Wednesday night game is going to be a tough one. That'll be a good showing. And obviously, Pitt has a lot of California connections. Obviously, you think about Olivia Babcock and Tori Stafford, both from the LA area. Rachel Fairbanks as well. Dan Fisher is from California. There's a big California connection. Obviously, California is one of the best states in many football and many sports. Sorry, obviously volleyball being one of them. They have a lot of big beach volleyball teams down there. So Pepperdine and UC Santa Barbara, both good teams. Like I said, that'll be a great weekend. Hopefully, some recruits take notice. Obviously, that's what Dan will be hoping, and also for some good RPI wins and just bolstering them heading back home because that'll be the last road trip for them until they get 4 straight non-conference games to end the non-conference schedule in the middle of September.
Yeah, and 2 of those definitely stand out. I'm going to save the big one for the end. So we'll skip ahead to Marquette. Another just like RPI game, round of 32 team last year in the tournament. But I think we've talked about sort of why they're scheduling these kind of teams. The real big one is bringing back Penn State as an in-season opponent as opposed to just an off-season opponent in your spring season scrimmages. They were Sweet 16 team last year, one of the better historical programs in the country, top 15 finish. And have they announced the location of this game? I would assume they'd move this one to the Pete.
Yep, it's in the Pete. It's on the website. It's at the Pete, so that'll be a big one.
I'm just super excited because it seemed like the teams were fairly evenly matched in their spring games. I believe they might have played. I think they played 5 sets in all of them. I don't fact check me on that, but that one's just super exciting. And like when you think about how already they're selling out games at the Pete with the Louisville series anytime they come to town, I have no question in my mind that that's going to be, if not the best, like atmosphere of the season, the top 2.
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about a huge game. You want to talk about a real rivalry. This is going to be one of the best games of the non-conference of all of volleyball. I mean, I know we got some big games coming up. I would mention some, but we're going to focus on this one. Pitt and Penn State. Penn State was the program in volleyball for a while. I mean, under the previous head coach. I'm blanking on his name for a second. I'll get it in a second. But 43 seasons he was there. They won 4 straight national titles from 2007 to 2010, and then back to back in 2013 and 2014. So 7 national titles during his time, which is ridiculous. That's a ton of success. I mean, obviously Pitt right now is trying to reach that pinnacle, but Penn State just won it like it was their own thing. But obviously, we look at 2021, right? Pitt hosts Penn State at home, and Pitt beats them in 4 sets. That's his last game as head coach, and obviously now you have a change in the Penn State program because they have a new head coach. Let me bring her name up because I should know this off the top of my head. Katie Schumacher Cawley. She was a part of the 1999 national championship team for Penn State. She took over from the coach I forgot, Russ Rose. He was there from 1979 to 2021, so a long time, and there was extreme success there. Penn State has a lot of very successful programs to the ire of Pitt fans, obviously, but yeah, they were a serious team. So we talk about 2021. That's a big win because Pitt goes to their first Final Four that year, right? And then they've obviously been to the last 3 Final Fours, the only team in Division One to do that, right? So obviously Pitt's the biggest team right now, right, in the state. And if you would have told people 10 years ago that Penn State wouldn't be better than Pitt, I think people would have laughed at you. But really, Pitt is the team right now. But Penn State's a serious program. I mean, I watched them play. Obviously, in the spring game, Pitt hosted them at the Fitzgerald Fieldhouse. Pretty solid attendance for a spring game. A lot of Penn State fans there. Obviously, a lot of Pitt fans too. Pitt would win in 4 sets, and then they lost in 5 sets at Rec Hall at In-State College. So very close games. I mean, obviously, it's just a spring, so it's a little bit too early to read into things when it comes to that matchup. But I think it spells good things for both programs. They're looking like, hey, we can win this game. Both teams are going to look at this and say, hey, we can win. Pitt's like, we can win this game in front of maybe a program record crowd at the Peterson Event Center. And Penn State's like, well, we can take back bragging rights. We can build some momentum going into the Big Ten season. Obviously, they'll have like Wisconsin and Nebraska and some of the Pac-12 teams that Pitt's playing, that like Oregon and USC. Like they got some teams they got to play, so they got a tough schedule as well. But I mean, this Pitt Penn State game, if you're a fan, how can you not be happy? I mean, seriously, you must be happy too, Zach.
I what night is this game on? Is this a
It's a
weekend
Wednesday
game?
night game, 7 p.m. September 18th, if I'm correct.
Dude, if this wasn't a weeknight game, I would make a trip up to Pittsburgh to get there. But a Wednesday night is a little tough to
Yeah.
swing with driving up and coming back the next day. Man, this one I'm super stoked for this. I would hope that it being a Pete game is, I would assume it would get some sort of national broadcast like they do for the Louisville games. Especially being sort of early in the season, you don't have any midweek football or anything like that. Like this one is like I'm setting aside some time. I am locking in front of my TV, and I will be posting through it, win or lose. I'm just super excited just to have we already have our really good ACC rivals, and then to bring another one back into the fold, another one from arguably the best volleyball conference in the nation now, with adding Oregon, USC, and having Nebraska and all that, Wisconsin. This is just ideal, because then this is really like, if you're kicking off the season with Oregon, that's sort of your first gut check. Obviously, both teams are not going to be like in their final state. They're more or less like a extreme tune-up game. And then after Penn State, I mean, it's not the last hard game. We still got Marquette at home, but like, it's almost like you have that initial check-in with what the team is like with Oregon, and then only a couple weeks later you have the biggest game prior to ACC play, and that's when you're really looking at what is this team, what can they do, and like, they're just a super good measuring stick. I'm just super excited for like two great teams, two great programs to go at it on a huge stage.
Yeah, I mean, Penn State has some ballers. I mean, they got 2 players from Nebraska. Caroline Uravicius, she is an outside hitter, right side. And you have Maggie Mendelson, middle blocker. I mean, they have some really good players. Their setter is very good. I'm trying to think of her name. Izzy Stark. She is a very solid player, very good freshman. I watched her play. She did very well. They also have players like Jess Mruzik. Hopefully I didn't pronounce that name wrong, but she was a second-team All-American last year, first-team All-Big Ten. Then you have grad student outside hitter, right side hitter Cameron Hanna. She earned second-team All-Big Ten honors herself. So they have some serious players there. This isn't just some like oh, it's Pitt Penn State, it's a big game, blah blah blah. No, they got some serious players. Pitt knows that. Dan Fisher knows that, and Penn State knows that as well. But obviously, it's going to be a great game. I'm so excited for that, and national broadcast is a must. I can't imagine it's not. I think when they were trying to get this on the schedule, they were probably like, we need to put this in front of some people's eyes. And with how volleyball's been growing in recent years, why not this game? Why not? I mean, as much as people love Nebraska and Wisconsin, why not something different? And people love this game. I mean, people love great rivalries in college sports. That's why we're here. That's why we cover the sport. And
Yeah.
what better rivalry really than the Keystone rivalry? I mean, granted, forget football. All right, even though we can talk about that forever. Last year, Pitt men's soccer and Penn State played. Great game, fighting, yellow cards, 1-1 draw, fans like toppling over each other. It was incredible atmosphere. This will be even better than that, and I'm just excited. I can't say anything else other than this is a great thing for volleyball and great for both programs.
And yeah, just to say one last thing, Pitt won, like you said, would not have scheduled this game if they thought they couldn't win. But they also scheduled this game because they know the quality of Penn State. Like you said, you got to build that at a conference resume. Like they scheduled this game because it's a good game. God damn it, get fucking excited.
Yeah, and also talking about West Virginia, I know people are like, "Why don't we play West Virginia?" And granted, they're going to be a program to look forward to in a few years. But right now, I think last year, don't quote me on this directly, but they were one of the worst Power Five RPI teams. They were really bad. It's not like Pitt wouldn't play West Virginia if they were good. Obviously, that would be a game that people would play. Pitt would want to play, but because they're just not a program right now that is at that level, I think Pitt just can't risk. What's not risking? It's more just like you need to build your resume against teams that have better RPI. I wish Pitt could play West Virginia regardless and still get a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament every year, but that's not how it works. Unfortunately, when it comes to the committee, they're going to look at like, oh, you're playing a poor team. So unfortunately, while we would love another backyard brawl, as we love to compete against our southern rivals and everything we can, we'll have to unfortunately wait for the program to get a little bit better in the next coming years.
Yeah, I just had to do a little fact check for you. They were the number 202 team in the RPI. They won 9 games.
Yeah, they got a new head coach. I'm trying to think of her name at the moment.
She's
but
from Washington
yeah,
State.
so Pitt played Washington State last year in the 2016. Obviously, because of what happened in the Pac-12, bringing that back up again, Washington State and Oregon State have like no home really. So they have a new head coach, and she's very good. I think she'll be able to bring this program to some relevance in a few seasons, but it'll take some time. West Virginia does not have a real history of being a great volleyball program in recent history, at least. So it'll take some time, but yeah, Jen Greeny is her name. So if you're curious about where West Virginia might go next few years, look her up and maybe monitor where the Mountaineers are going if you'd like. Obviously, you probably won't because you're a Pitt fan, but I might.
Here's the thing. You have to keep tabs on all your enemies. So,
Yeah.
so we will be watching closely the possible West Virginia rise in the RPI, and we'll be looking forward to the matches played in 2026 or so.
Yes.
We're forward thinking here. So let's get into this ACC schedule. I'm not going to go game by game because if you want to do that, you can pull up the schedule and look at the tweet, go on the website. I think you're gonna know where I want to go first with the schedule.
Well, let's talk about the differences in the schedule between last year and this year. So with the
Okay, go ahead.
So the additions of Cal and Stanford from the Pac-12 and SMU from the American Athletic Conference, we now have 18 teams in the ACC instead of 15. So what's happening is that you're playing 3 teams home and away instead of 4 like last season, and you're going to 20 games instead of 18. So a little bit more games for Pitt this year. So the home and away games are going to be against Louisville, Georgia Tech, and SMU. I think you want to talk about Louisville, so we'll go there first.
Yeah. So when I saw this schedule, I said that the schedule makers gave Pitt midterm exams and a final exam,
Yep,
and
yep.
we'll start with the midterms. I think that between Marquette and the first like what I call the midterms, was I'm trying to remember. I know that Stanford is very good. What's like what are Cal and SMU like?
Well, SMU won the American Athletic Conference, so they
Okay.
are a pretty decent team. Pitt will play them twice in 4 days. Pitt's going to play them at home on October 9th, the Wednesday, and then they'll play them on the Saturday at 2 p.m. on the road. So Pitt and SMU, new rivals in the ACC. I mean, maybe. You never know, but yeah, I think because Pitt lacks like a true rival in the ACC. Obviously, with women's basketball, they're only playing. So not to go into women's basketball too much, but they're only playing one team home and away, unlike four like they previously had, because they're sticking to eight. To their so women's basketball is sticking to 18. They're not adding 2 games. So Pitt's only playing SMU home and away, and they're not playing like Notre Dame and Louisville and Syracuse like they used to. So my point being is back to volleyball is that SMU lacks a real rival, and Pitt to some extent also lacks a real rival in the ACC aside from Louisville and Georgia Tech, who we'll talk about in a little bit. But so Pitt will play SMU, which is a good team. Again, Pitt. It's better than playing Syracuse twice. But I'll tell you
Yeah.
that it's better than playing Syracuse, who were probably the worst RPI team. I mean, I know Zach, you can probably check if you want, but they were probably the worst RPI Power 5 team from last season. They were bad, man. They ran like 7-8 players. I was like, this is a program that is not run well. I usually don't say that about most programs, but yeah, it was not nice. Um, yeah,
I actually think that you are right saying
yeah,
that they were the worst power team in the entire nation. They were ranked at 259. I'm not seeing any other power teams even ranked in the same fucking like stratosphere. like wait a minute, hold up. Yeah, the next power team is Iowa, and they're like 40 spots ahead.
yeah. They were really bad last year. I mean, so
They
for
got
Pitt,
cat flood at like middle
yeah,
blocker last year.
obviously some context there. Pitt lost both two of the middle blockers from last year, obviously Rachel Jepson and Brie Kelly, to injuries. So they only had 2 middle blockers, and they had Chia Nwokolo and they had Emma Monks. But Pitt was experimenting in that game because Syracuse was so bad. They had Cat Flood being the middle. Not that Cat Flood is not a bad player. I do not want that on record. But I will say that Cat Flood should not be your starting middle blocker. She is a great server. She can play outside hitter. I like her in the back row, but no, she's not a middle blocker. So it was just
No,
so hilarious to see how she got points there. They just again nothing against the players, but the way the program was run, it was ridiculous. Like, how are you running 7-8 players and that's it? Like Pitt runs more players. Like that's such a little amount of players. Like how is that not like I don't. The main thing to take away from this conversation, everyone, is that Syracuse is terrible. Pitt is now benefiting from having Louisville, Georgia Tech still as their home and away, and SMU, who's a much better team than Syracuse, as their third home and away. Obviously, Stanford might have been the team that Pitt fans would have wanted to have as that home and away as well because they're so good. But you get SMU, no complaints there from me.
yeah, I mean, like we're not hating on Syracuse. We're just saying that the cat flood middle blocker thing that was not that was Dan Fisher stunning. He was he was dunking with style. As far as the Stanford thing goes, I think that with keeping Louisville and Georgia Tech, if we had all three of those as the home and aways, like that would have been fucking insane.
They would have been insane. But
But I mean,
we love competition here. I love playing good teams because back to the non-conference, why Pitt's schedule is so tough is because the ACC, a lot of these teams just not. I mean, to be fair, Syracuse is a special level of bad, but a lot of the other teams are not great themselves, and the committee doesn't show them respect. I think the ACC can get better in the next few years. I think they do have some teams that are getting better, but when you have the historical notion of Nebraska and Wisconsin as these great teams and some other teams as well in the Big Ten. Pitt, the ACC just doesn't have that. I mean, Pitt and Louisville are kind of more relatively recently serious teams. Like Pitt and Louisville are great teams, but it's more recent, so they're having to prove themselves consistently. And to be fair, I think you still should schedule hard. I think Pitt, it's a good thing that Pitt schedules the non-conference well. So that is why the ACC schedule impacts the non-conference schedule for fans who don't know.
yeah, I mean that's why we're sort of breezing through this games, and we're not going into a 20-minute breakdown on Boston College and Syracuse. I mean, to your point,
Exactly.
over half the team is under that team. Over half the league is under that 64 mark in the RPI,
Right.
not counting the new additions because I don't feel like filtering for that. But yeah, let's get right to it. We talked about Stanford, the midterm exam, October 20th, home against Stanford, October 25th, home against Louisville.
That's at the Pete too.
Are both of them or just the Louisville
No,
game?
just the Louisville game. Louisville will be at the Pete on that Friday.
That is first off crazy that they did that back to back when you can you can basically space it out.
I mean, to be fair, if you think about it, that's kind of Elite Eight, Final Four range, right? You're talking about teams you face in the Elite Eight, Final Four. That's kind of like your midterm. Like you got to beat these teams if you want to win. Now, granted, I don't think Pitt's going to win every game this season. I know I should be predicting they win every game, sweep every team, don't drop a set, but like that's not realistic. These are some serious teams, but I will say at home, Pitt usually is really good. I mean, they rarely lose at home, obviously because of how good they are. But even against good teams, we saw it against Louisville last year, down 2 sets in both games at the Pete and on the Elite Eight. They come back and win those games. So if you're Pitt, you got to think we can't lose the first 2 sets again because you don't want to do that again. But
Yeah.
I think we got the fans here. If we mess up, we still have them on our like they're still going to support us regardless. So that's a big benefit. So obviously, I mean, and you might wonder why. Well, why aren't they playing Stanford at the Peterson Event Center? It's like, well, the girls love playing at Fitzgerald Fieldhouse. It's their home. They practice there all the time. As much as they do like playing in the Pete, they want to play in the Fitzgerald Fieldhouse. That's why, aside from men's basketball issues in the Elite Eight last year, that's why they didn't play Louisville and Peterson Event Center in the Elite Eight.
Yeah, and like also you got to keep the Pete game special. You got to have them have meaning. If you're playing every single team at the Pete, all of a sudden it's like, well, come on. I mean, I will say though, I am super glad to have Stanford on home. Like you got it. The home field advantage at whether it's at the Fitz or at the Pete is super real. I don't think that
Right.
like the reverse sweeps against Louisville, call this a hot take if you will, that those probably don't happen on the road.
No, they don't. They absolutely don't. Pitt has struggled in Louisville, regardless if they play at their main gym or at the KFC Yum Center, which
God,
they
I
will.
fucking hate that name.
Yeah, ridiculous name, but that's the name. That's where they'll play again in Louisville this season, and also where the Final Four will be hosted. So something to think about
Oh.
that as well. The KFC Yum Center, the worst name ever, but it's not. It doesn't seem like a terrible venue.
I will say I do like that both Pitt and Louisville are like, okay, these are the big girls. We're bringing them to the basketball
Absolutely,
arena.
absolutely. We talk about certain teams avoiding rivalries and being a bit weak and wimpy about it. These teams, they want to play each other every single game. They want to play each other in the biggest moments every single time. They want to beat the living crap out of each other. It's a big rivalry. There's smack talk. They want to win. And I know Louisville's want to coming back for some vengeance, but I know Pitt is eager to establish that dominance in the rivalry. It's
Dude,
it's so good, man.
I still can't believe that Anna DeBeer still has college eligibility.
She is the crux of Pitt volleyball. As much as I think, not to make a big thing, but I think Pitt showed themselves as the better team that Elite Eight match. I think in those last 3 sets, they kind of just dominated. It wasn't like,
Mhm.
I mean, they won that reverse sweep the first time, but it was much closer. But in the Elite Eight, I mean, those last 3 sets, I mean, they dominated, man. It was nasty. Obviously, for us Pitt fans, or as me as a Pitt writer, unbiased, of course, very very cool to watch. My point being is like Louisville got embarrassed. I mean, as much as it's not just getting reverse swept, it wasn't like they were close. Like it was bad, man, and they want to come back with some vengeance. And obviously, they have Anna DeBeer back, one of the best players I've ever watched. She is just so good. It's ridiculous how talented she is. Some of the best. She has such a great vertical. It's ridiculous. Maybe she could. Can she dunk? That's a question. Maybe I'll ask her next time if I get a chance to ask her. But she is just so good. She is one of the best attackers I've ever seen, and she is such a threat to Pitt. I think at one point in the first game last year, not the first game, the second game, the one that played at home in the regular season, she had 9 kills and 11 attacks. That's just ridiculous. That's such a high frequent hitting percentage. It's just like, what do you even do? I mean, it wasn't like Pitt was bad. They just had no answer at that moment. So it's just like, man, she really just is such a great player, and I'm excited to see her play again, even though it's against Pitt, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I do joke, and it's like, how does she still have eligibility? But like, as just a fan of watching the sport in general, like, you hate to see it against Pitt, but when she's on, there is something about it when she goes up, when she's in the zone. It's like, oh yeah, like you can try and block it all you want, but that ball is gonna touch the ground. You can't do anything about it.
Right. Yeah, she's
All right.
just she's the reason why Louisville is so great. I mean, they're talking about real programs. You need those kind of players. Pitt has those players, but Louisville does as well, which makes the rivalry great. It's not fun playing a rival when they stink, right? You want to play a rival when they're great, and you want to beat them, and you'll take those losses because you know they're a great team as well. There's a lot of, as much as there is a lot of smack talk between the both programs, there's a lot of respect too. They know they need each other to succeed in the sport, and I think the emergence of teams like Pitt and Louisville make volleyball a lot better because when teams when you for a non-revenue sport, if you only have the same teams winning all the time, it's boring and you don't get a lot of fans invested. When you have teams that get better, obviously Louisville is a volleyball hotbed for Pitt. Like I mean, 10 years ago, people weren't checking in the program like this. Now it's like people want to know what the volleyball team's doing like every second of the day. So it's like that's real. I mean, it's not Nebraska level. Obviously, we can talk about Nebraska if you want, but I mean, it's great to see people love volleyball, and I think why not? When we watch Pitt play, I mean, you should love the sport. It's so much fun, and they're such great athletes. Like, why not love the sport?
Yeah. And then, so we'll move on here to the end of the season, the final exam, and talk about a fucking tune-up going into the postseason here with a road match at Louisville in the KFC Yum Center, and then a home game against Georgia Tech. We skipped over it, but the first game against Georgia Tech is at the end of September in Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Georgia Tech are a serious team. Pitt's been very successful against Georgia Tech for a variety of reasons, but Georgia Tech is no joke. I mean, they went up 2 sets at Pitt last year. Pitt came back to beat them in 5 sets. Again, they were up 2-1 in 2022 at home at Pitt at the Peterson Event Center, but Pitt came back and won that as well. Pitt's had some great battles with Georgia Tech. I mean, but they also dominated them in Atlanta last year. They swept them. Dylan Griffin had a ridiculous serving game, if I can remember. I think Olivia Babcock got some ridiculous honors for that game as well. Like, but Georgia Tech's no joke. They have a great head coach who's got Brazilian linkage, so they'll always have some great Brazilian players in that program. And yeah, I'm always excited to see Georgia Tech. They're a little bit lower than Louisville, but I mean, they made the Sweet 16 last year. I think if they can stay healthy and they have their best players, they could be a team that hosts. They gets top 16 seed and hosts. So I mean, these are huge games. Like that September 29th game, which is the second ACC game, is a huge game. Now, granted, Pitt will have a little bit of filler because I play Boston College and Syracuse the next week. But my point being is, like, that's a huge game. You got to win that game, right? You want to win that game, and you want to do it in style if you can, but you got to get that win. And obviously, Georgia Tech will be looking to get a win as well. But I mean, if you're Pitt, these are huge games, and yeah, like I don't know. I think I've said it all already.
Yeah, and like especially when it comes down to the end of the season, playing back to back Louisville, Georgia Tech. Not only are those the main rivals in the ACC, those are teams that you have the most history with that are currently on your level. Last year, the title for the league came down to the last game of the season,
Yep.
and looking at how the schedule is built out, there's probably a really good chance that it comes down to that last game of the season again.
Yeah, I mean, also interesting. People forget that Florida State won the ACC title
Yeah,
last
they won the ACC last
Florida,
year.
so interesting enough, Pitt played Florida State in Tallahassee last year. They were down 2 sets, almost came back and won it, but there was some controversy towards the end of it. We won't talk about it. It was some ridiculous call. I think one of the Florida State attackers hit over they put their hand over the net, but they didn't call it. They couldn't challenge it or something. If I remember correctly, again, don't quote me on this directly, but it was a ridiculous end of the game. But my point being is yes, Florida State won the ACC. They were the automatic qualifier because they beat Pitt. Pitt and Florida State had the same record, but because Florida State beat Pitt, they had the automatic qualifier. My point being is they're not a crap team either. Then Pitt plays them in Miami at home. I think 2 weeks prior to Georgia Tech. So my point being is it's gonna be a tough end of the season for Pitt, and they got to be ready. But I mean, honestly, that's when Pitt comes alive the most is those end of the season games. I think sometimes they'll struggle in the non-conference, and then when it comes to those November games, I mean, they never lose. They rarely are going to lose those games, even if they are playing great teams. They turn up for those games when they can, and that's why they've been to the last 3 Final Fours. Obviously,
Yeah, and then, I mean, even so, pretty much they did stack even without the last games of the season. You've got Florida State, Miami, NC State, all in November, who were all towards the top half of the ACC last year. So not only are you getting an extreme ramp up in those last 2 games, but you're even working up to those games from early November, going from middle of the pack and the bottom all the way to your middle class and then right to the fucking top of the league.
Yeah, I mean, this is the end of the season. These are the games you want to play in, and Wake Forest isn't a joke either. I mean, they were solid last year. I think they tailed off towards the end. So they missed out on the NCAA tournament, but again, if you're Pitt, you want to see these teams in the ACC do really well. I mean, Dan Fisher last year, I asked him, he was like, "Yeah, I mean, the ACC could be the best conference in the country," and he believes that. And with the additions of Stanford and Cal and SMU, I mean, he might have a point that the ACC is getting really good. And I think it's time for the ACC to show that they're not going to take any crap anymore. And obviously, with how well Pitt's done and Louisville's done, they've shown that. But it's time for some of the other teams to step up as well. But I'm excited to see a lot of these teams play. I mean, August cannot come soon enough, Zach. I can only say that.
Hell yeah. So that's actually a pretty good transition because as far as news with the team itself, I mean, we just talked about 30 minutes on the schedule. It's pretty big, but when it comes to the actual team itself, it's very funny that really there isn't a lot of big news. Most of your, household name players from last year are back. Pretty much 5 or 6 starters are back. Rachel Fairbanks, Tori Stafford,
Yep.
Liv Babcock, Emmy Klika. Dude, why am I pulling a blank? Whoa.
Valeria Vasquez Gomez cannot forget.
Valeria Vasquez Gomez. Yeah,
Cannot
jeez.
forget our
That
favorite
is,
6 year.
that is a tough look for me. But yeah, like that's 5 out of the 6 positions that are going to play the majority of the minutes for Pitt are back.
Yep.
Where we don't have anything back really is that middle blocker.
Yep.
And Dom, why is that?
So Chia Mokolo and Emma Monks both graduated. They were in their final year of eligibility, and obviously talk about Rachel Jepson and Brie Kelly. Brie Kelly was injured, and Rachel Jepson was injured as well. They're both back. Brie's still coming back from the injury. Obviously, not in April she wasn't 100%, but she was obviously much better than when she got severely injured against Kentucky in the 4th game of the season, which is disappointing because she was really good. I mean, she came in last year in June, Florida transfer, serious player, friend of Rachel Fairbanks. They played on the USA U20 or U21 team with Dan Fisher as head coach. So obviously Dan pulled some strings there, but I mean, um, she's a really good player. I'm excited to see what she can do this season. But Rachel Jepson, she's gone. Important to note that Rachel Jepson is no longer with the team. Well, she won't be playing with the team. She's just not. We don't know if she's in the transfer portal or not. There's nothing being announced about that. But she left because, well, she's a member of the Church of Latter-day Saints. So she's from Utah, where there are a lot of, obviously, Mormons are the name of people in the Church of Latter-day Saints. So one of the things that young people in the Church of Latter-day Saints do, or Mormons do, is they do missionary work. And for women, that's about 18 months, a year and a half. For men, it's about 2 years. So for her, she announced in April, at the end of April, that she will be going to Paris to do missionary work there. Obviously, just doing what she needs to do as a part of her faith for about 18 months, which keeps her out for not just this season, but almost all of next season as well. She would not be back until November, which is 2-3 seasons into the 2025 season. So it's very likely she misses the next 2 seasons. So Pitt now only has 3 middle blockers. They're back to the Church of Latter-day Saints for a second there. Pitt football also had to deal with this sort of thing. Trey Anderson, who's from Utah himself, was a member of the class of 2019, but because he chose to do missionary work prior to coming to college, men do, or I guess men, young boys, well, they're adults at this point. They're around 18 to 25. He did 2 years because men do 2 years in the Church of Latter-day Saints for missionary work. He came back. He was classified in the class of 2021. Spent 3 seasons with the program. He transferred back to Utah State. All the best of luck to him as he goes back to Utah. But yeah, Jepson will be gone. I thought she was going to have a breakout season. I really like the potential she has, but she's not going to be with the team for probably the next 2 seasons. We'll see if she comes back in 2026. But won't be able to worry about that for a while. But Brie Kelly is back. I guess she's the only middle blocker that is back. But again, hopefully she's 100% by August. If she is, serious player, All-American, book it. You heard from me first. But you got 2 freshmen. You got 2 freshmen at middle blocker. Let's talk about one of them, Bianca Garibaldi. She's Argentinian. I know it sounds like an Italian name. There are some Italians in Argentina, so obviously, but she still speaks Spanish, speaks English pretty well as well. She had a really solid career down in Argentina, played for River Plate, which is one of the bigger sports teams. Obviously, if you know anything about Argentinian soccer, River Plate, Boca Juniors, one of the biggest rivalries in the world. Super Classico, as they call it, if I'm not mistaken. It's huge. So she played for a very good team. River Plate are no joke. Um, she's not the tallest middle blocker. I think she's around 5'10", 5'11ish, I think. But she has great vertical. It's ridiculous how high she can jump. So she'll be playing this year. I mean, they only have 3 middle blockers. I'm blanking on the other name because I'm a terrible writer.
Is it Jones is the other middle
Yeah,
blocker?
Riley Jones, yes. I thought that I just didn't want to be. Yeah, she's very good as well. Comes from the Flint School in Virginia, but she's from Maryland, so DMV area. If you have any DMV connections, you know anything about it. She was very good down there. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I just wrote about it. Volley Mag put her in the Fab 50 for the top 50 recruits in the class of 2024. She and Garibaldi enrolled early, so they enrolled in January, and they were able to play in that spring season. Very, very important for Pitt because they have experience going into summer camp or summer preseason, whatever, and then obviously with the games against Oregon and going forward from there. So I really like what she can do as well. She's tall, she's strong, very efficient in terms of getting kills, and she makes some blocks. I know it's a lot to ask out of freshmen to step up in that role, but I mean, look at last year. Olivia Babcock, National Freshman of the Year. Tori Stafford, All American. I mean, freshmen can do well at Pitt, and I think we're going to see some great freshmen this year. And obviously, very excited to see a healthy Bree Kelly. I think that'll be one of the best parts of this team, and one of the reasons why I said to you before, Zach, but I think this could be Pitt's best team ever.
Yeah, and just so I'm gonna touch on a couple things. First, the mental image of a 6'4" Mormon missionary just walking around France is just it's just blowing my mind. I'm just the idea of that is so funny. Listen, I'm just gonna say it. France is not ready for what's coming to them, and then obviously, what Rachel Jepson is doing is that she's saving her eligibility for 2026
Right.
when Pitt plays West Virginia in the
Yes,
game that we've already predicted.
Yeah, that's why she's doing this. It's not even just because she's a Mormon, because she wants to play West Virginia.
Yeah. No, but yeah, I mean, I'm super excited to see a healthy season out of Bree Kelly. Like you said, she only played 4 games, but in those 4 games, like she was clearly one of the best players on the court for a stacked team. And like the fact that she went down and then we still did all that, like,
Yeah, I know.
ooh, it makes you think. But super excited to see her play. Like, in the game that she was playing at, I don't think there was like anyone who hit the ball harder than her. And maybe I'm just like misremembering things, or maybe I'm just like, embellishing in my memory. But like, that's a fastball. And then in terms of like the freshmen, like you said, there was a ton of success last year, and that was with freshmen at 2 positions, not just one.
Right.
Like, and to top it all off, it's not just like you're throwing the freshmen in there with other inexperienced players. Valeria's a 6th year. Tori and Olivia are coming off of amazing freshman seasons. Rachel has literally been one of the best players in the country since she stepped on the court at Pitt. Like, you're putting them with such a great surrounding cast that they're just being set up for success with how the team's been constructed around them. And then, worst comes to worst, they had Cat flooded middle blocker last year.
It's just
Time to bring it back down.
Again. Yeah, obviously we make jokes, but best of luck to Rachel Jepson during her time in France.
For
Hope she
sure.
does well there. But yeah, middle blocker. I mean, could Dan Fisher work some magic? Could he bring in another middle blocker to give them 4 like they had last year? I mean, that's always a possibility, but I don't know if they would necessarily will go that route. But to be fair, if they did, I wouldn't be surprised either. Would you be, Zach?
Who am I to bet against Dan Fisher bringing in a late off-season transfer that all of a sudden just becomes a second team All-American? I'm not gonna doubt the man who's done that like 17 times.
Yeah, obviously, some of the names we're thinking about here, people, Serena Gray came from Penn State in 2021. Obviously, she was an All-American. Probably one of my favorite players that since I've been covering her. She is incredible athlete, great person. Yeah, she was a serious player. That middle blocker, ridiculously good. But the way Pitt likes to play, they have 2 middle blockers. So but they obviously sub out. So they're not going to have 2 middle blockers at the same time. You'll have one middle blocker. So if Bree Kelly's healthy, safe to assume she'll be the starter. And then I think Riley Jones will likely be back up, and then Bianca Garibaldi at 3rd. But I mean, with the non-conference games, we'll see a lot of switching, a lot of changes. So we'll be interested to see how everyone plays. But I mean, everyone's going to play to some extent, whether they'll play a ton or a little bit. But no one's going to be like never playing. So everyone on this team will play. That's why I love watching Pitt so much. Everyone gets to play, and everyone's an important part of it in whatever they do.
Yeah, and I mean, just to go back to that, I mean, one of the biggest pluses to having everyone play is that you constantly have people ready to step up. like I said, Brie Kelly goes down 4 games into the season. Emma Monk stepped up. Rachel Jepson stepped up until she obviously got hurt.
Right.
But like being able to have that many talented players to be able to go that deep and be able to confidently say she's going to go do her job and get us a win. Like, first off, that is a testament to Dan's recruiting, what he's done both internationally and nationally going into Florida for these recruits, especially recruiting the DMV heavy. But like, it's just a part of the system that he's running, the part of the program philosophy, and it doesn't do anything but help the program both in season and seasons down the line.
Yeah, I mean, Pitt's done great with the recruiting class. Obviously, that 2023 recruiting class, I think if we see the emergence of Blair Bayless, who I have high hopes for, and obviously setter Haiti Tatawawa, she is a fantastic setter. If they can really reach their potential, which I think they have, I mean, that's going to be one of the best classes in Pitt history, recruiting wise. But actually, back to Blair Bayless. Shout out to her. She's going to be on the U21 team, right, for the USA. Remember that? We're discussing that a while ago. How did she get on that team?
How did she get on that team? Well, Dom, don't say that drunk driving has never done anything positive for the world.
I got the cane to bring you off stage.
Yeah. Am I going to have to bleep that one? Maybe. No, we are referring to
Harper
line,
Murray,
please. Who's the
outside
Harper Murray getting
Nebraska. She's a great player. I think Big Ten Freshman of the Year, All-American, serious player, did well against Pitt in that Final Four match, which obviously broke our hearts if you're a Pitt fan.
Yeah.
But she's a great player. But this offseason, she has had some serious off-the-court issues. She blew a 1.6 or 7. It was twice the legal limit, and she's not even 21. So,
okay, so I will say it wasn't a 1 point. A 1 point would be. Oh no! What I'm doing my math wrong. Holy fuck!
It is. Yeah, I'll bring it. Let me bring it up. Let me bring it up to make sure that I got everything right.
Okay, let's bring up the police filings while Dom is doing that. She was booze cruising, which I guess there's really nothing else to do in Nebraska in the off season. But yeah, no, I mean, listen, that Uber exists. Come on.
It's not. So it's not 1 point. I'm wrong. It was a .169, which is twice the legal limit in Nebraska. She also was in the possession of a fake ID, which I don't get because, again, we've talked about Nebraska volleyball. Everyone knows Nebraska players. Why on earth she had a fake ID or what that would even do? Like, I feel like everyone would know who she is. Like, I just don't. That's more of like a me complaining thing, but like, rant.
I mean, colleges gonna have fake IDs. I don't like.
Obviously, they did. I mean, did I know about fake IDs when I was in college? Obviously not. I was a great human being and never did anything wrong, obviously. But, I'm joking. But my point being is, like, it's just funny because she's like 6'6", like, and she's one of the best players in the country. And she obviously got that. That happened this summer, the spring, sorry. She was still on the team. They didn't suspend her or anything. Nebraska did not suspend her. And then she got arrested again. She stole some rings from a store, like that were $60, like overall, and that was another thing. And to me, it's like it's so disappointing because she is such a great player, and we want to see her on the court. I think any neutral want to see her on the court, but right now, it's just like it's sad. It's sad to see someone go through this, and it seems like Nebraska has not suspended her. They haven't said she's going to redshirt this year. They're just kind of like, oh, she needs to be on the court. That's where she needs to be. But for me, there has to be like some sort of like consequence for driving twice the legal limit. I mean, like that could be serious. Seriously, could hurt someone. And also, what help is she getting by just kind of ignoring this? Is how I'm seeing it. It's like the program's just ignoring it. It's like you got to deal with these. Like you got to be a serious program and deal with this. I know Nebraska gets a little bit of leeway, but come on, like you got to these players. You got to deal with things at least internally in a better way than this.
Yeah, I mean, the obvious parallel here is Georgia football under Kirby Smart. Jalen Carter was, had a murder charge against him for drunk driving with football staffers, driving with them and leading to the death of a staffer with the Georgia football program. And I mean, that when schools have these huge fan favorite money making programs, they're going to try and do everything in their power to. I mean, they're not going. They can't sweep this one under the rug. I mean, but like they're going to do everything in their power to keep that program and all their talented players protected from really any
Right.
consequences because they can.
Yeah, and it's just
And
like, not to cut you off, Zach. It's just like the USA
go
team did not state that they dropped Murray for this, for the drunk driving. But I think it's fair for anyone with the mind and has some common sense that doing this is because of that. I mean, like Blair did not play a ton last year. She played in 19 matches in 27 sets, right? She didn't set the world on fire. She's a good player. She obviously had a lot of high rankings as a recruit, and I really think she could be a great player, but she did not have a better season than Harper Murray did. That's easy for anyone to see. But I mean, again, like it can't just be the USA team being like, oh yeah, you can't play in the U21 team because you did this. Like someone has to be like, come on, like what are we doing here? I don't want to be like obviously a cop about this, but like I want to see Harper Murray playing and I want her to be the best state, and I just feel like we're not seeing that right now, and it's just disappointing as a fan of the sport. And that that's just my rant a little bit, I guess. Zach, what do you think?
yeah, I mean, I guess Team USA did the right thing. I mean, obviously they didn't put it out, but you can draw a pretty straight line between these incidents and her being dismissed from the U21 team, or I don't know if she was dismissed, but she was replaced by Blair Bayless,
Not
and
solicited, yeah.
yeah, so but like you would think, and I mean, obviously, like I said, this is a problem throughout college sports. Every sport has this where it's more obviously common in football and basketball where
Right.
the players have more media attention on them. They are, they're getting more money from the schools to do stupid shit with. I was a stupid kid in college. I'm not going to say that you have to be a perfect angel, but you would think that these programs would have accountability. And the fact that Team USA, which is the highest level of basketball in the nation, representing
Right.
ourselves internationally, they did the right thing. And now Nebraska is choosing, obviously, for their own reasons for protecting their program and their program image and identity, which honestly kind of hurts it in the long run. But you kind of have to take step. Like, I don't know why you wouldn't almost take the direction and follow what Team USA is doing. Like,
Yeah,
great, I get it. College kids are dumb. If I was a fucking college athlete, I probably would have got suspended.
absolutely.
I'm not gonna say I'm a
Yeah, right.
saint, but at the same time, you're not. When you're a college athlete, you are a public facing
Right.
part of the university. You're extremely public facing. You are a representative of the university. When me as some dumbass kid pukes on some Oakland street, no one cares. I'm just some dumbass kid paying the school $40,000 a year.
Yeah.
Actually, not that much,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
but
you're
like when you are a public facing athlete, especially at such a high profile program as Nebraska, like I just don't get why the university wouldn't do it to protect their own public image and to like at least like say like we take this seriously, because what they've done is essentially saying, yeah, we don't give a shit. This program makes us a ton of money. You think we're gonna fuck with that?
Yeah, I mean, she's got so just to go more legal jargon, she's got two misdemeanor charges for DUI and possessing a fake ID, and she'll have a hearing for that on the 24th of this month, June 24th. So, I mean, does like if they find her guilty, do like what happens then? That's what I'm just saying. It's just like why not as the university, why not as the program, like take the initiative steps to be like we're going to protect our athletes or we're going to make sure that this doesn't happen again and try to put our athletes in the best position to get back to where they were in terms of not just playing but also mentally as well.
I will say I would find it hard to believe that Nebraska would not put their finger on the scale and tip that court hearing in their players' favor, because if you are, I say this in quotations, but if you are a serious college football program, that's what you college sports program, that's what you
Yeah.
do. You are ruthless to win. It's not the right thing to do, but it is what a quote unquote serious program will do. I would expect that the charges either get dropped or they are pled down to some other form of charge, and then everyone goes on their merry way. I, however, do not see why they would not do some sort of internal thing to even go into that court case saying, hey, we're dealing with this internally, drop it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just
But also, are the Lincoln police really going to be like go against the thing that makes the town one of the biggest in Nebraska?
yeah,
Who's to say?
yeah.
Who's
I
to
mean,
say?
Yeah, but honestly, just want to state that no bashing of Harper Murray here. We're just stating that we're concerned for one of the best athletes in the country, and this is all just very silly, in my opinion, overall. But back to praising Blair Bayless for making the USA U21 team. Some notes to make point of: she's going to train in Anaheim, California, June 14th through 22nd. So next weekend, starting next weekend, she'll be down there. She'll be there for
Oh, yeah.
8 days. And she hasn't made the team officially, but she's one of the 20 players that are vying to be one of the top 12 players to make the USA U21 team, and they will compete at the uh, Nordica or Norsica Continental Championship, June 23rd for the 20 June 23rd to July 1st in Toronto, Canada. So representing the US. She's obviously Blair and Olivia have represented the USA before. They've done really well. So I mean, she knows what it's like to be in the USA setup. So it's not like something new for her. But
Hmm.
obviously, if you're a Pitt fan, this should be great because not only is Blair getting a chance to show how great she is, she's getting some extra practice, playing with some of the best teams, playing with some of the best players in the country. I mean, it's always a benefit. I mean, we've seen Rachel Fairbanks benefit from that greatly. She's been with Dan, playing under Dan for 2 times in the USA setup, and she's been great. So always great to see a Pitt USA member. Hopefully in the next few years, obviously not this year, and next hopefully by 2028 we have a Pitt Olympian at the Los Angeles Olympics. Hopefully that's a thing.
That would be sick. Yeah,
Would be a
I mean,
blast.
and as we said earlier, you can probably draw a line between Rachel and Bree Kelly playing for the same Team USA, and then her choosing to transfer to Pitt.
Yeah, just
Just saying,
it might not be the biggest line or the most boldest line, but there's a line. There's a line.
it's dotted, it's dashed.
um,
Do you have anything else before we
yeah.
head out here?
Let's try to think of something else to talk about here. Obviously, I don't think we talked about volleyball since the end of the season, so obviously, great season from the team last year. Another Final Four appearance. Tampa was great. I think it was obviously a lot better than when I went to Omaha because it's not 20 degrees and freezing. It was nice. It was so great to see so many fans. There are obviously so many Nebraska fans. Nebraska is a real program. It is ridiculous how well they travel. It's not like Pitt fans don't travel. It's kind of tough to get down to Tampa, and it's a little bit different when you have an entire state behind you versus when you have just Pitt behind you. Pitt's still growing as a program. I think it's important for us to remember that Pitt's not really at the top of the food chain yet. But with Dan Fisher in charge and the players he has this season, I mean, I'm hoping for a national title, not just for myself as a writer, but as a fan of the sport. I think Pitt really could go all the way. Obviously, we have a few more months till that happens, but I'm very confident in this team and the progress they're making, even in year I think 12 of Dan Fisher. I mean, yeah, it's year 12 of Dan Fisher. This team went from hardly ever winning the NCAA tournament to 4 straight Elite Eights and 3 straight Final Fours. It's ridiculous how good Pitt's been. Um, so I'm excited to see what they do this year. And I hope you are too, Zach.
That I am, and I'll see. I don't know if they go back to the Final Four. I feel like I kind of have to go to Louisville. It was a little bit short notice for me to try and get down to Tampa.
Your Tampa's a bit tough.
Yeah, I mean, I will say though, like talking about the Nebraska fans, when I saw like the walk up videos, like when the teams
Yeah,
got off the bus and everything, and like I saw the Nebraska and Wisconsin fans, I was like, oh, whoa, those
it's
are.
it's
I
different.
know that Pitt fans. We travel well across pretty much all sports. Like I've been to away games at
Yeah,
several stadiums throughout the ACC. Even in Tennessee, Pitt traveled like very well. Um, but it is different when you are the flagship
yeah,
school and you're not sharing it with 2 other schools in the same state on your level.
yep,
But hey, man, they keep getting better. The fans keep growing. Fucking Big Ben's a fan now because his daughter is a huge fan of the team. So they're only going to keep traveling better. I don't even like that is just like I think an undeniable fact.
yep. Obviously, we have a lot of Pitt alums across the country. I mean, obviously, when Pitt, I know there's some people in California that might be happy when Pitt goes there every other year,
Mm.
basically. I think because they'll obviously play Cal and Stanford here this season, but next season they'll travel to the Bay Area to play them. They're obviously going to be playing in LA and Malibu. Not a bad trip, honestly. I would say middle September, LA and Malibu. I'm not complaining. I wouldn't complain if I was a Pitt volleyball player.
Wait, no, they wouldn't play in LA. They're both in the Bay Area.
No, I meant they play this season. They play at USC and Pepper
Oh
and
yeah, this season,
Harbor and
yeah,
like
yeah.
LA and Malibu. I would just say it's like I'm not complaining about having to travel to California midweek if I get to go there. That sounds like a lot of fun. Wonder what that's like.
But yeah, no, dude, twist my arm. I gotta go play in LA on a
Oh, the
Wednesday
worst.
instead of going to class. God, the worst.
I'd rather be in philosophy class than in LA.
Yeah, I'm zooming in from the beach today. What's up?
Yeah. Yeah. Final words. Obviously, if you know me, guys, Dominic Campbell, I cover Pitt in many different varieties. I mean, obviously, I'm with Inside the Panthers of Sports Illustrated Fan Nation now, um, and I'll still be covering Pitt volleyball. That'll be a big part of my coverage. You guys obviously love Pitt volleyball coverage. Shows in the stats, shows in the response you give to my work, and I always appreciate you guys reading and listening to my podcast with me and Zach. Um, we're gonna have more podcasts about volleyball. I mean, leading up to the season, if something big comes up, we're gonna talk about it. But
Oh
just
yeah.
glad to have a whole hour to talk to you guys about volleyball. Well, we obviously got a little off track, but really, I think we stayed pretty on track for how much has gone on the past 6-7 months since the end of the tournament, the end of the Final Four. But yeah, stay tuned to me. I'm on Twitter at Dom is Money or just Dominic Campbell. Inside the Panthers as well. Follow us there. Um, yeah, I'm excited to keep doing volleyball coverage. Ever have any questions, you can DM me. I'm a normal human being. I will respond to your DMs as long as you are kind. And most Pit fans are pretty solid, so I'll always take the time to respond to you guys and the questions you got. So thank you for
Oh
reading
yeah.
and thanks for the attention as well.
Oh yeah. And listen, this is not. Fans should know if you've been following us a while. This is not going to be the last show that we have Dom on. We've had his coworker Steven on now, so we've got the entire Inside the Panthers network in our grasp. We
Yep.
are shadow controlling them from from Baltimore, Maryland. Quick couple show updates. I know I should have probably done this at the top. Next week we will have our fan hot takes episode. If you have not gotten your hot takes in, it is in the pinned tweet in the show Twitter at Simplify Pod. I think we have like 20 or 30. We've got some pretty hot takes to go over next week. We've only got one volleyball one so far, so get them in. I want more to talk about. And then, honestly, season previews are coming. I'm hoping to have the first batch of ACC previews ready by the end of June. They'll be going up on my Substack. You can find that at my Twitter at I'm Real Angry. I will warn you, I changed my name too many times, so now I am Woke Football Insider. Do not be tricked. That is me. They won't let me change it anymore. I'm Woke Football Insider for a while, even though I'm not a football insider. But yeah, follow the show, follow Dom, keep supporting his work, keep tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, everyone.
Hail to Pitt.
Pit.